All right. Let's get into all these articles and studies you sent my way, all about gut health and allergies in kids.
Yeah.
It seems like you're really interested in like how the gut microbiome,
Mm-hmm.
all those little organisms hanging out in our intestines
Right.
can actually impact things like atopic dermatitis and even asthma and food allergies.
It's pretty fascinating.
Oh, and you even included some stuff on necrotizing enterocolitis.
Right.
That's a pretty serious condition that can affect preemies.
Yeah, it is.
And then we even have some information here on probiotics and prebiotics.
Mm-hmm.
So basically today we're going to sift through all this stuff, pull out the most interesting bits,
Okay.
and hopefully uncover a few surprises along the way.
Yeah, I think we will. It's amazing how much we're learning about the gut microbiome these days
Oh, absolutely.
and how much of an impact it has on pretty much every aspect of our health.
Yeah, it really is a fascinating area of research.
It is.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. How does this like incredible community of microbes even like develop in the first place?
Well, it's a really dynamic process, and we're learning that it probably begins even before birth.
Really?
Scientists are finding traces of bacterial DNA in the placenta, in the meconium, even in the amniotic fluid,
Wow.
which suggests that microbial colonization might actually start earlier than we thought.
So like even in the womb?
Potentially,
Huh.
yeah, but there is some debate about whether these findings represent true colonization or, maybe contamination during the sampling process.
Okay, so it's still kind of a mystery unfolding.
A little bit, yeah.
That's so intriguing.
Yeah.
But regardless of when it actually starts, we know that like the gut microbiome goes through some pretty major developments during the first few years of life and then eventually sort of stabilizes around age 3.
Right.
I was reading about this fascinating study from Japan where they analyzed stool samples from people aged 0 to 104.
Wow.
It's incredible like seeing how these microbial communities actually like evolve over a lifetime.
Yeah, it really highlights how dynamic the gut microbiome is and how it adapts to different stages of life.
Yeah.
What's really remarkable is that by age 3, a child's gut microbiome starts to resemble that of an adult.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, but here's where I think it gets really interesting. The way a baby is born seems to have a huge impact on how their early microbiome develops.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Right.
During a vaginal birth, the baby is exposed to the mother's vaginal and perianal bacteria,
Oh, okay.
which kind of provides a starter kit for their own gut microbiome.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah,
Like a microbial inheritance passed down from mother to child.
exactly.
I like that.
Yeah,
But for babies born via C-section,
yeah,
they miss out on that initial exposure.
they do.
And that can actually lead to some pretty big differences in their gut microbiome composition.
Yay.
It kind of makes you wonder how those early differences, might affect their health later on.
Yeah, it's a really critical area of research.
For sure.
And it's not just the birth method. The type of feeding the baby receives also plays a big role
Oh, okay.
in shaping the gut microbiome.
Right.
Breast milk, for instance, contains special prebiotics,
Okay.
which are basically food for beneficial bacteria.
So it's like fertilizer for the good bacteria.
Exactly,
Gotcha.
helping them to flourish in the infant's gut.
It's amazing how breast milk is so, like, perfectly designed to nourish not just the baby, but their developing gut microbiome, too.
Yeah.
It's like nature's probiotic formula.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of probiotics, we know that breastfed babies tend to have higher levels of certain beneficial bacteria, like bifidobacterium and lactobacillus.
That's right.
And those are super important because they produce those short-chain fatty acids
Yes.
that nourish the gut lining and help prevent inflammation.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
On the other hand, formula-fed babies tend to have higher counts of Roseburia clostridium and Anerostipes,
Okay.
which are also important parts of the gut microbiome.
Right.
But they have different functions. So it just underscores how even subtle differences in early nutrition can have a lasting impact, on those microbial communities that live within us.
Yeah, it really does paint a picture of how interconnected everything is.
Yeah.
And how those early experiences really can shape the foundation of our gut health.
Yeah, for sure.
And of course, it's not just birth method and feeding.
Right.
There are other things like diet and antibiotic use, even gestational age and exposure to pets, and the environment that can influence that delicate balance.
Absolutely. It's a complex interplay of factors that all contribute to the development of the gut microbiome.
Right.
And when that balance is disrupted, it can lead to what we call dysbiosis,
Okay.
which has been linked to a whole bunch of health issues, including allergies.
So dysbiosis is basically when that balance gets thrown off.
Exactly.
Okay, we'll have to dive into that a little bit more after the break.
Oh.
Okay, so we've talked about how important a balanced gut microbiome is for our health.
Right.
But what happens when things get out of whack?
Yeah.
What exactly is dysbiosis?
Well,
And how does it contribute to all these allergies?
dysbiosis basically means there's like an imbalance in that gut microbial community.
Okay.
So, the proportions of those beneficial bacteria and the potentially harmful bacteria, they're out of whack.
Okay.
And this imbalance can really mess with our immune system.
Oh, sure.
And that can make us more susceptible to allergies.
So it's not just about, like, having bad bacteria in there.
Right.
It's really about the overall balance of the whole ecosystem.
Exactly. A diverse and balanced gut microbiome.
Right.
It helps train our immune system to tell the difference between harmless stuff and actual threats.
Okay.
So when dysbiosis happens, that balance is disrupted and it can lead to a super reactive immune response. And that can manifest as allergies.
Makes sense. And you mentioned the hygiene hypothesis earlier.
Yes.
The idea that less exposure to microbes early in life can actually make our immune systems more sensitive. How does that tie into dysbiosis?
Okay, so think of your gut lining like a tightly woven fabric. That barrier is super important.
Okay.
It keeps things where they're supposed to be,
Right.
prevents harmful stuff from leaking into the bloodstream.
Got it.
Dysbiosis can loosen those threads,
Okay.
make the gut leaky.
Oh, so it's compromised.
Exactly.
Right.
And then allergens can slip through,
Oh.
and that triggers the immune response.
So it's like a breach in security.
Pretty much.
And those allergens are setting off alarm bells when they shouldn't.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how this all connects.
Good.
Now, I know there's some new research coming out about a potential connection between dysbiosis and butyric acid.
That's right.
What's that all about?
Well, butyric acid is a short-chain fatty acid.
Okay.
It's produced by certain good bacteria in the gut,
Okay.
and it plays a ton of really important roles in keeping the gut healthy. So one of its main jobs is to nourish those cells lining the gut.
Okay.
Keeping that barrier nice and strong
Right.
prevents that leakiness we were talking about. And butyric acid also helps to regulate the immune system.
Oh, wow.
It promotes those peacekeeping cells that calm down the allergic reactions.
So are you saying that if dysbiosis reduces those butyric acid producing bacteria, it could lead to a leaky gut and a more reactive immune system?
That's exactly what researchers are looking at.
Oh, wow.
It's really exciting.
Yeah.
Because imagine if we could just target those butyric acid producing bacteria,
Okay.
maybe with probiotics or prebiotics or even postbiotics that are rich in butyric acid.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be huge for preventing allergies.
That is fascinating.
It is.
It really highlights how important it is to, like, take care of our gut
Yeah,
and make sure that microbiome is healthy.
for sure.
Now, I'm curious how this all plays out with specific types of allergies.
Oh, okay.
Let's start with atopic dermatitis.
Right.
It's not just a childhood thing, is it?
You're right. Atopic dermatitis with, that really itchy red eczema.
Yeah.
It's becoming way more common in adults, too.
That's interesting.
And studies are showing that there's a link between gut microbiome diversity and the severity of atopic dermatitis.
So less diversity equals worse symptoms.
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow, it makes you wonder if, like, encouraging a diverse and balanced gut microbiome could help people manage this condition.
Yeah, it's definitely a promising area of research.
For sure.
And there's another interesting finding with atopic dermatitis.
Okay.
There's often an increase in Staphylococcus aureus.
Okay.
That's a type of bacteria
Right.
colonizing the skin of people with this condition.
So it's not just about having less diversity, it's also about the presence of this potentially problematic bacteria.
Right, it's like a double whammy
Yeah.
for the skin.
What about asthma?
Okay.
I mean, it's a global health issue affecting millions.
It is.
How does the gut microbiome fit into all that?
Well, asthma is a really complex condition.
Right.
But we're now starting to understand how important the gut-lung axis is.
The gut-lung axis.
Yeah, basically what happens in the gut doesn't just stay in the gut. It can actually impact the lungs and vice versa.
Interesting.
Like a two-way communication highway between these two seemingly distant organs.
So our gut microbes are connected to our respiratory health.
Exactly.
Are there any studies that show that?
There is some pretty compelling evidence coming out.
Okay.
One study found that the composition of the gut microbiome at 1 year old was actually linked to asthma risk by age 5.
Wow.
So that suggests that early gut health could be shaping respiratory health years down the line.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
So early in life, the gut microbiome might be setting the stage for future health problems or, susceptibility to disease.
Right.
You mentioned a study earlier comparing Amish and Hutterite communities.
Yes.
And they live similar lifestyles, but they have really different farming practices.
Right.
And that seems to be connected to their allergy and asthma rates.
Yeah, that study is a really cool real-world
Oh,
example
interesting.
of the hygiene hypothesis in action.
Okay.
The Amish, who, engage in traditional farming practices, they're exposed to a wider range of microbes.
Uh-huh.
They have much lower allergy and asthma rates compared to the Hutterites, who have more modern farming methods.
Well, it's like exposure to more microbes, particularly early in life, could actually be protective.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Huh, it really makes you rethink that whole like sterility thing.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
maybe we've become too clean for our own good.
It's possible.
Okay, well, let's shift gears a bit and talk about food allergies
Okay.
because that's a big concern for a lot of parents.
It is.
How does the gut microbiome factor into those?
Well, food allergies involve the immune system overreacting to certain proteins in food.
Right.
And it seems that the gut microbiome plays a part in triggering these reactions.
Okay.
So remember that leaky gut we talked about?
Yeah.
Well, it seems like it's a key player in food allergies too.
Okay.
When the gut barrier is compromised, food allergens can sneak into the bloodstream.
Where they shouldn't be.
Exactly, and that triggers the immune system to launch an attack. And that's what causes those allergic reactions.
Look, those allergens are getting past security again,
Pretty much.
setting off all the alarms.
Mm-hmm.
But research is now getting so specific.
It is.
They're looking at individual bacteria
Right.
and how they're connected to particular allergies.
Yeah. For example, one study found that kids with egg allergies,
Yeah.
they had higher levels of certain bacteria in their gut,
Like what kind?
like Lactospiraceae and Streptococcus.
So specific bacteria might be linked to specific food allergies.
And that's what it looks like.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it opens up some interesting possibilities for targeted treatments.
Right, based on someone's individual gut microbiome.
Exactly.
Wow, are there any other examples like that?
There are.
Okay.
Another study found that children who outgrew their milk allergies had more Clostridia and Firmicutes bacteria early in life.
So it's not just about the presence or absence of certain bacteria.
Right.
It's about the timing
Mm-hmm.
and how these populations change over time.
Exactly. It's super complex.
Yeah, but it's so fascinating because it really highlights the potential for personalized approaches
Mm-hmm.
to, preventing and treating allergies.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so we've covered atopic dermatitis,
Yeah.
asthma, food allergies.
Right.
You also mentioned another condition earlier that I want to hear more about.
Okay.
Necrotizing enterocolitis.
Oh, NEC.
Yeah, this is a serious condition that affects preemies, right?
Yes, NEC is a devastating condition
Yeah.
that mainly affects premature infants.
Right.
And it's actually a leading cause of illness and death in neonatal intensive care units.
Sounds really scary for those families.
Oh, it is.
What have researchers learned about the gut microbiome's role in all this?
Well, they found that babies with NEC,
Yeah.
they tend to have very distinct gut microbiome profiles
Okay.
compared to healthy infants.
Okay.
And one study found that formula feeding, especially with high osmotic strength formulas, is a major risk factor for NEC.
Could you explain what high osmotic strength formulas are?
Sure, osmosis is basically just the movement of water across a membrane.
Oh.
High osmotic strength formulas have a higher concentration of solutes, like sugars and minerals,
Okay.
which can actually pull water out of the baby's intestines.
Oh, wow.
And this can disrupt the gut barrier,
Oh, no.
make it more prone to inflammation and damage, which could contribute to NEC.
So the type of nutrition these fragile babies get can have a huge impact on their gut health.
For sure.
And it could even increase their risk of developing this serious condition.
Absolutely. It's really important to think carefully about the nutritional needs of preemies
Yeah.
and choose formulas that are going to support their delicate gut microbiome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you said that babies with NEC have distinct gut microbiome profiles.
Yes.
What have researchers actually found?
Well, early studies found that there are changes in the fecal bacteria as early as 72 hours before the NEC symptoms even show up.
Really?
Yeah, and those changes include an increase in bacteria like Enterobacter cloacae and Escherichia coli, and a decrease in others like Streptococcus faecalis and staphylococcal species.
So it's almost like a microbial fingerprint,
Yeah, you could say that.
pointing to babies who might be at high risk.
Exactly, and there's this really striking study on preterm twins
Okay.
where one twin developed NEC and the other didn't. And it really illustrates this point.
What happened?
They found that the twin who developed NEC had a decrease in gut diversity and an increase in Escherichia species,
Oh.
while the other twin's gut microbiome stayed pretty stable.
Wow. So even tiny variations in the microbiome can have huge consequences.
Yeah, especially in vulnerable populations like preemies.
Makes you wonder if those microbial shifts could be used as early warning signs.
That's what researchers are hoping for.
Yeah, so we could maybe intervene earlier.
Exactly. The goal is to understand these patterns and identify the triggers,
Right.
so we can develop strategies to prevent NEC, or at least make it less severe.
Well, that's a great place to leave it. For now, we'll be right back after a quick break.
Okay, so we've explored a lot about the gut microbiome
Weird.
and its connection to allergies,
Yeah.
but it's not all bad news, right?
Oh, definitely not.
There must be some things we can do
Yeah, I
to
know.
help keep our gut healthy and maybe reduce the risk of allergies.
Absolutely. There's actually a lot we can do
Okay,
to support gut health and potentially lower the risk of allergies.
that's encouraging.
It really is. I mean, the exciting thing is that we're not just passive bystanders here.
Right.
We can actively shape our gut microbiome.
So let's talk about interventions.
Let's get-
You mentioned probiotics and prebiotics earlier.
Yes.
Can you remind me how those work and what the research says about, whether they can prevent or manage allergies?
Okay, so probiotics are live microorganisms.
Okay.
They're essentially beneficial bacteria
Gotcha.
that can help to restore balance to the gut microbiome.
Okay.
And they do that in a few ways.
Sure.
First, they can compete with harmful bacteria for resources.
Mm.
Okay, so they're like fighting for space.
Yeah, basically.
Okay,
Keeping those troublemakers from taking over.
gotcha.
Second, they can strengthen that gut barrier,
Okay,
help to prevent the leaky gut we talked about.
gotcha.
And third, they can actually modulate the immune response.
Wow.
They promote those peacekeeping cells that calm down the allergic reactions.
So they're like little warriors
Yeah,
fighting on multiple fronts.
pretty much.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks.
What about the research, though?
Well, there's a lot of evidence suggesting that probiotics can be really helpful for a range of conditions,
Okay, like what?
like antibiotic-associated diarrhea, inflammatory bowel disease, celiac disease, and even allergies.
That's great to hear. Okay, now prebiotics are a little more mysterious to me.
Yeah.
How do those work? Are they a type of bacteria?
Prebiotics are not bacteria themselves.
Okay.
They're more like food for the good bacteria that are already living in our gut.
So they're like fertilizer.
Yeah, you could think of it that way. They're basically non-digestible fibers that selectively nourish those beneficial bacteria,
Interesting.
helping them thrive and outcompete the less desirable microbes.
So we're creating like a feast for the good guys.
Exactly.
I like it. Okay, well, what does the research say about prebiotics? Can they reduce allergy risks?
It's still early, but studies are showing some really promising results, especially with atopic dermatitis.
Okay.
Some research suggests that prebiotics can help reduce the severity of eczema symptoms and improve skin health.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It sounds like both probiotics and prebiotics can play a role in keeping our gut healthy
For sure.
and potentially reducing those allergy risks.
Yeah.
Now, you also mentioned something called fecal microbiota transplantation.
Right. FMT.
Yeah, can you tell me a little more about that?
Yeah.
It sounds kind of intense.
Yeah, it does sound a bit strange, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's actually a surprisingly effective treatment for
Okay.
some really serious gut conditions.
Interesting.
So basically with FMT, you're transferring a healthy stool sample from a donor to someone who's having gut problems.
So you're basically giving their gut microbiome like a complete makeover.
Yeah, it's kind of like that.
That's wild to think that something as simple as a stool transplant could have such a big impact on someone's health.
It is pretty amazing, right?
It is. What kind of conditions has it been successful in treating?
Well, it's been super successful in treating Clostridium difficile infection,
Okay.
which is a serious bacterial infection that can cause, really bad diarrhea and inflammation in the colon.
Yeah, that sounds awful.
Yeah, it is. And it's also been effective for inflammatory bowel disease
Wow.
and even obesity, which shows you how powerful the gut microbiome can be.
Yeah, it really highlights that connection between our gut and our overall well-being.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about probiotics and prebiotics and even fecal transplants, but let's not forget about diet,
Right.
because that's something we can all control to some extent.
Exactly.
So how does what we eat impact our gut microbiome?
Well, diet plays a huge role in shaping the gut microbiome.
Okay.
The foods we choose can either nourish those good bacteria,
Yeah.
or they can create an environment where the not-so-good microbes take over.
Interesting.
A high-fiber diet with lots of fruits, veggies, whole grains.
Yeah, classic advice.
That's like a feast for the good bacteria,
Makes sense.
especially for species like Prevotella, which are known to be really good for gut health.
Okay, what about the typical Western diet?
Yeah.
which is often loaded with fat and pretty low in fiber.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Western diet can disrupt that delicate balance in the gut.
Okay.
Well, that high-fat, low-fiber combo can actually decrease diversity and increase inflammation in the gut.
So it's like creating the perfect environment for those bad bacteria to thrive.
Pretty much, yeah.
So it really comes down to making choices that either nurture or disrupt that balance.
Exactly.
Are there any specific diets that are especially good for our gut?
Well, the Mediterranean diet is a great example.
Oh, yeah.
It emphasizes fruits, veggies, whole grains, legumes, and healthy fats like olive oil.
Yeah.
And it's been linked to a more diverse and balanced gut microbiome.
That's great advice. And of course, we can't forget about breastfeeding.
Right.
We talked earlier about how important breast milk is
Yes.
for nourishing a healthy gut microbiome in babies.
It's the best.
Yeah, it really is. It provides all the nutrients they need for good gut development.
Mm-hmm.
And it contains those prebiotics
Yes.
that promote the growth of the good bacteria. Studies have even shown that educating and supporting breastfeeding moms can help them breastfeed longer,
That's right.
which is great for the baby's gut.
It is.
So it's not just about the baby's overall health, but also about setting them up with a healthy gut microbiome right from the start.
Exactly. It's a great investment in their long-term health.
And I think the differences in the gut microbiomes of breastfed and formula-fed babies are pretty striking.
Oh, yeah, they are.
Like, formula-fed babies tend to have more bacteroids, Clostridium, and lactobacillus,
That's right.
while breastfed babies have more bifidobacterium and enterobacteriation.
Oh, right.
So even those subtle differences in early nutrition can really have a lasting impact.
Yeah, they can.
Well, we've covered so much today,
We have.
from the development of the gut microbiome to its connection with allergies
Right.
and all the things we can do to keep it
It's
healthy.
like a complex world.
It is, but it's clear that the gut plays a much bigger role in our health than we ever thought.
Oh, absolutely. And we've only just scratched the surface.
I know, it's amazing.
There's still so much more to learn about this incredible world inside us.
It's fascinating. Okay, but before we wrap up, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
That link between C-sections and early antibiotic use
Yeah.
and a higher risk of allergies.
Right.
We know that premature babies often need both of those things.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for their gut health?
That's a really important point, and an area where we need a lot more research.
Yeah, it makes sense.
You know, preemies face unique challenges.
Sure.
And their gut microbiome is especially vulnerable.
Right.
So we need to figure out how to best support those babies and help them develop healthy guts.
It's definitely a sobering thought, but it also highlights the need for more research in this area.
Absolutely, and the potential to find new interventions that can make a real difference.
Well, on that note, I think we should wrap up this deep dive.
Okay.
It's been a really eye-opening journey into the world of the gut microbiome,
It has.
and I hope it's given everyone a good understanding of this fascinating topic.
Me too. I hope it sparks some curiosity.
Yeah, I encourage everyone to keep learning about the gut microbiome
Yes,
because knowledge is power.
it is.
The more we understand about how it works, the better choices we can make for our health.
Exactly.
So thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time, stay curious.